Imagine for a moment that you are walking down the street, minding your own business, maybe heading to grab a coffee or on your way to work, and you see a dull brown coin lying in a crack of the sidewalk, the kind of thing most people wouldn't even pause to pick up, just a penny, just 1 cent, worth so little in our modern economy that some people don't even bother to carry them anymore, but you, for whatever reason, bend down and pluck it from the ground, and in doing so you unknowingly take hold of a tiny disc of metal that is not just a coin but a story, a time capsule, a treasure, because this is no ordinary penny, this is a 1940 USA wheat penny, and while to the untrained eye it looks like millions of others minted that year, to the trained eye of a numismatist or to the electrified crowd of a high-end auction room, this coin is a financial bombshell, a 1-cent piece that in a perfect storm of rarity, condition, and collector obsession has commanded a jaw-dropping $7 million valuation, and right now your hand is trembling because you are beginning to realize that you are not holding pocket change but history, and the question flooding your mind is, how can a penny possibly be worth more than a Beverly Hills mansion, more than a private island, more than what most people will earn in decades of work? And to answer that, we have to rewind the clock to the year 1940. A year when the world was teetering on the edge of chaos, World War II raging in Europe while the United States still clung to neutrality, Franklin D. Roosevelt in the White House guiding a nation still climbing out of the Great Depression, the American spirit tested but unbroken, and in that climate, the U.S. Mint was producing coins not just as currency but as a symbol of economic stability, and among those coins was the humble wheat penny. So called for the stylized wheat stalks flanking the words 1 cent on the reverse, the obverse carrying the ever-familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln. A design that had been in use since 1909, but what made some 1940 wheat pennies special was not immediately obvious. You see, coins are mass-produced industrial products, and in that process, oddities can occur. A planchet, that's the blank disc before it's struck, of the wrong metal might be used, a die might be misaligned, a leftover piece from a previous year or different denomination might slip into the press. And in rare cases, experimental strikes or mint errors are made in quantities so vanishingly small that decades later they become legends, and in the pantheon of such rarities, the 1940 wheat penny in question stands out because of a peculiar combination of features. Some experts whisper it was struck on a bronze planchet intended for an earlier issue, others point to the possibility of a transition metal composition that was never meant to leave the mint. Still others theorize it could have been an intentional presentation strike, given to an important figure and somehow lost to history, but whatever its origin, this single specimen survived in absolutely pristine condition, what collectors call mint state, with no wear, sharp details, and that shimmering original luster that makes the coin look as though it were struck yesterday. And when such a specimen surfaces, the numismatic world goes into a frenzy, because rarity plus condition plus a good story equals astronomical value, and the story of this coin's public emergence is almost as dramatic as its journey through history. Picture a hushed auction room, the world's top coin dealers, private collectors, and investment moguls sitting shoulder to shoulder, the coin displayed under a spotlight, its copper-red glow reflecting in their eyes, the auctioneer describing its provenance. Owned for decades by a reclusive Midwestern collector who acquired it in the 1950s from a small-town bank manager who had unknowingly kept it in a desk drawer since the day it arrived in his till. And as the bidding starts, hands shoot up, paddles wave, numbers climb, 1 million, 2 million, 3, the tension thick as the air in the room, until finally, after an electric volley between two anonymous phone bidders, the hammer falls at $7 million, shattering records and sending ripples through the global collectibles market, and in that moment, this humble 1-cent coin becomes a cultural phenomenon, making headlines around the world, sparking a tidal wave of interest in wheat pennies, and inspiring everyday people to dig through their change jars and attic boxes in the hope that lightning might strike twice. And here's the thing, while this particular coin's value is an extreme outlier, it underscores the broader truth that value in collectibles is a strange alchemy of rarity, condition, and narrative. And the narratives that capture our imagination tend to be those that connect us viscerally to a specific moment in history, and the 1940 wheat penny connects us to an America on the cusp of war, to the craftsmanship of early 20th century minting, to the mystery of how a rare error could go unnoticed for decades, and to the romantic idea that life-changing fortune might be hiding in the most mundane places. And when you think about it, this fascination with rare coins is part of a much older human instinct. We have always treasured the unusual, the scarce, the beautiful, whether in shells, beads, gemstones, or minted metal, and coins in particular have the unique quality of being both utilitarian and symbolic, carrying the authority of the state and the artistry of their designers, while also passing through countless human hands, absorbing the energy of every era they survive. And that's why the story of this 1940 penny isn't just about money, it's about meaning, about the bridge between the everyday and the extraordinary. And while most of us will never own a coin worth millions, the hunt, the hope, the what if, that's the magic that keeps collectors and dreamers alike searching. So the next time you hear the clink of change, you might pause, you might look more closely, you might wonder if history itself is staring back at you from the worn face of a coin, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be the one to discover the next great numismatic legend, because as impossible as it sounds, every legendary coin was once just another coin, until someone noticed, until someone cared, until its story was told, and now that you know this story you might start seeing pennies, and the world, a little differently. And if you found this journey into the saga of the 1940 USA wheat penny worth $7 million as thrilling and mind-bending as I did in telling it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep your eyes open for the treasures that history hides in plain sight. Imagine the story hasn't even cooled from the shockwaves of the 1940 wheat penny fetching $7 million, and yet, in the very same world of numismatic obsession where copper and history intertwine, there emerges another titan of the penny world, the 1944 wheat penny, 1 cent in denomination yet $6 million in reality. And if the first story taught us anything, it's that lightning doesn't just strike twice in the same place. It strikes wherever human history, rare chance, and collector passion collide, and the tale of this 1944 wheat penny is every bit as electrifying as its 1940 counterpart, perhaps even more so because it carries with it the vivid backdrop of wartime America, a country fully committed to the fight of World War II, factories churning out tanks and planes, families rationing food and fuel, the entire economy pivoting toward the war effort. And that pivot included the U.S. Mint, which in 1943 had replaced the traditional copper penny with one made of zinc coated steel to conserve copper for ammunition and military wiring. But in 1944 the Mint returned to copper cents, except here's where the magic and mystery slip in, because in the chaotic changeover from steel back to copper, a few leftover steel planchets from 1943 were accidentally fed into the presses and struck with the 1944 design. And these off-metal errors became instant rarities, with only a handful known to exist today, and among those, one in particular achieved such pristine condition and such impeccable provenance that when it came to market it sold for a staggering $6 million, and to understand why, you have to appreciate the sheer improbability of its survival. Because in an era when coins were tools of daily commerce, used and abused without thought, the odds that a rare era penny could avoid circulation were, avoid being lost, avoid the fate of being melted down or damaged, are astronomically low, and yet this one did, likely pulled from circulation almost immediately. After striking due to its unusual silvery color compared to the standard copper cents of 1944, and perhaps kept as a curiosity by some observant citizen who noticed it felt lighter or looked different. And from there it began its decades-long journey through the hands of a few private owners who recognized its significance, until finally it emerged in the rarefied air of elite coin auctions, where its story, combined with its flawless condition and the aura of wartime drama, propelled it to that multi-million-dollar result. And much like the 1940 wheat penny, its allure isn't just about metal and minting, it's about narrative, the story of a nation in war, the urgency of production, the human error or mechanical happenstance that let a 1943 planchet survive into 1944, the sheer improbability of its preservation, and the human tendency to imbue small physical objects with layers of meaning. And in this case, the 1944 wheat penny is a tiny, tangible relic of a world at its most intense, a time when every resource was stretched, every effort mattered, and yet in the middle of that urgency, a few anomalies slipped through, little time travelers now worth millions. And the psychology of their value is as fascinating as the coins themselves, because to pay $6 million for a 1-cent piece is not about practical worth, it's about owning a physical manifestation of rarity, of history, of bragging rights. And in the inner circles of elite collecting, such ownership confers a kind of immortality, because the names of those who possess the great rarities become part of the legend, whispered at conventions, recorded in auction catalogs, etched into the lore that drives the next generation of collectors to chase their own holy grails. And so the 1944 wheat penny joins the pantheon alongside the 1913 Liberty nickel, the 1804 silver dollar, the 1933 double eagle. Each a reminder that accidents and anomalies can sometimes surpass the planned and the perfect in value, and, for the everyday dreamer, the existence of these coins turns every handful of change into a potential treasure hunt, Because what's to say that another one isn't hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered in an old jar in someone's garage or a forgotten coin collection in a relative's attic? And this thrill of possibility is part of why these stories go viral, why they light up social media feeds and news headlines. Because they tap into that deep human love for the underdog, for the overlooked object that turns out to be priceless. And they remind us that history is not locked away in museums but circulating all around us, sometimes literally in the loose change we ignore. And when you step back and see the bigger picture, the saga of the 1940 and 1944 wheat pennies is more than just a tale of money and metal. It's a lesson in attention, in the value of curiosity, in the fact that extraordinary stories often start with the most ordinary of beginnings. And so whether it's the 1940 copper cent that rocketed to $7 million or the 1944 steel planchet era that claimed $6 million, these coins stand as proof that the intersection of rarity, condition, and narrative can transform even the smallest, most common-seeming item into a cultural icon. And the market for such icons is driven not only by numismatists but by investors who see rare coins as a store of value, a hedge against economic uncertainty, a portable piece of wealth that also happens to be a work of art and a slice of history. And as the demand grows, so too does the hunt, with metal detector hobbyists scanning fields, estate sales shoppers peering into old tins, and kids learning from their grandparents how to spot wheat pennies and other vintage coins, each of them secretly hoping that fate might place one of these million-dollar miracles into their hands. And while most searches end without glory, the rare stories of success feed the fire, keep the dream alive, and ensure that the legends of these pennies will never fade. Because as long as human beings cherish rarity, and as long as there are stories to tell, there will always be someone willing to pay unimaginable sums for a tiny copper or steel disc that links them to a moment in time. And if you've stayed with me through this entire odyssey of two of the most valuable pennies in American history, remember this: every coin has a story, most are humble, but a few are extraordinary, and those few can change lives, inspire generations, and ignite the imagination like nothing else. So check your change, cherish the details, and if you ever do find one of these treasures, know that you are holding not just a coin but a legend. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the wild world of wheat pennies and the mind-blowing fortunes they've commanded, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep your eyes wide open for the history that just might be jingling in your pocket right now. And just when the astonishment over the staggering tales of the 1940 wheat penny worth $7 million and the 1944 steel planchet era that commanded $6 million begins to settle into the folds of numismatic legend, another chapter surges forth from the depths of coin collecting history. One that brings yet another humble 1-cent piece into the spotlight with a jaw-dropping $5 million valuation, the 1945 wheat penny, an unassuming copper coin whose true worth lies hidden beneath its modest face value and in the unique circumstances of its creation, preservation, and discovery. For 1945 was a year of monumental significance in the United States and across the globe, a year that saw the end of the Second World War, the return of soldiers to their families, the celebration of victory tempered by the grief of loss, and the beginning of a new chapter in American life. And in the midst of this transformative period, the U.S. Mint continued its duty of producing coins to fuel the recovering economy, striking millions of Lincoln Wheat Pennies as it had since 1909, each bearing the solemn, steadfast profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the two wheat stalks framing the denomination on the reverse. Yet within those countless copper discs there existed a handful of anomalies, errors so rare that they would only be recognized decades later as the jewels of the numismatic world. And the 1945 wheat penny that would one day be worth $5 million was among them, a coin shrouded in both the technical intrigue of minting mystery and the romantic allure of historical happenstance, believed by some experts to have been struck on a leftover steel planchet from 1943 or on a transitional bronze alloy with unusual metallurgical properties, perhaps due to wartime shortages and substitutions. With its existence likely the result of a fleeting oversight in the high-pressure environment of wartime production, where speed and volume often left room for rare but spectacular mistakes. And this coin's journey from the presses to its eventual exaltation in the collecting community is one of sheer improbability, for it somehow avoided the wear and tear of circulation that erodes most coins into anonymity, instead being preserved in a state of immaculate condition, the sharpness of its design, the brilliance of its original luster, and the clarity of its fields and devices making it a visual masterpiece in miniature. And its story first began to stir the waters of the collecting world when it surfaced quietly in the possession of a retired machinist, who had kept it in a small envelope tucked inside an old wooden toolbox for decades, a keepsake from his days working near a Federal Reserve branch where coins sometimes passed through in bulk, and it was only when his grandchildren, sorting through his belongings after his passing, stumbled upon the envelope and decided to have the coin appraised that its true nature was revealed, and the news spread quickly among numismatists. Here was a 1945 wheat penny unlike any other, verified by top grading services as an authentic off-metal strike in near-perfect mint state, a coin that combined rarity, condition, and historical resonance in such a way that the value assigned to it was not merely the sum of its parts but the result of feverish demand from the upper echelons of coin collecting. And when it finally appeared at auction, the event was treated not just as a sale but as a cultural happening, the room packed with serious collectors, investors, and the merely curious, all drawn by the magnetic pull of this tiny copper relic of 1945, and the bidding war that ensued was fierce and relentless, starting in the hundreds of thousands, then climbing past the million mark, each increment met with murmurs and the quick scribbles of reporters' pens, until, after a tense back and forth between two determined bidders, one in the room, one on the phone, the hammer fell at an astonishing $5 million. Cementing this penny's place in history and igniting another wave of public fascination with the Wheat Penny series, and the implications of such a sale reverberated through the market, sparking renewed interest in mid-century coinage, inspiring countless treasure hunts through jars of change, and reinforcing the idea that monumental value can be hidden in the most ordinary-seeming objects. And the 1945 wheat penny's appeal lies not only in its error or its flawless preservation, but in its symbolic role as a bridge between the war years and the peace that followed, a coin minted at the dawn of a new era, imbued with the spirit of resilience and renewal that defined post-war America. And for those who hold it, or even catch a glimpse of it, the coin is more than a financial asset. It is a tangible connection to a pivotal moment in human history, a reminder that even in the smallest artifacts, great stories reside, and in the broader tapestry of numismatic lore, the 1945 wheat penny now takes its place alongside the 1940, the 1944, and the other titans of the series, each representing a unique confluence of chance, craft, and circumstance that transforms common currency into cultural treasure, and for every collector, dealer, or dreamer who hears its story, it reignites that enduring spark of curiosity, that hope that maybe, just maybe, a fortune is waiting in the most unassuming corners of life, and that is why these coins will forever command not only record-breaking prices but also a kind of reverence, because they prove that the extraordinary often hides in plain sight. And if this journey through the saga of the 1945 wheat penny and its multi-million-dollar destiny has captivated you, then like, subscribe, and never stop looking closely at the world around you, because history, value, and wonder might be waiting right there in the palm of your hand. And so the legend of the Wheat Penny series rolled onward like a copper river through the annals of numismatic history, with each great discovery adding another gleaming link to a chain of fascination that has ensnared the imaginations of collectors and dreamers for generations. For the 1940 wheat penny at $7 million, the 1944 steel planchet marvel at $6 million, and the 1945 anomaly at $5 million are not merely isolated cases but living proof that within the vast ocean of coins produced by the U.S. Mint, there exist rare and precious islands, and these islands are formed not by design but by the perfect storm of accident, circumstance, and the passage of time, and the more one immerses themselves in this world, the more one understands that the wheat penny is more than just a coin. It is a cultural artifact, a miniature time capsule whose weight is not measured only in grams but in the stories it carries. For each of these extraordinary specimens has journeyed through decades, outlasting wars, recessions, and societal change, surviving the hands of countless people or perhaps just a very few careful stewards, to arrive in the present day as silent witnesses to history. And when we look closely at the 1945 wheat penny in particular, with its shimmering fields and sharp relief, its anomalous composition and wartime pedigree, we see not just a piece of metal but a symbol of the unpredictable magic that sometimes flows through the machinery of human creation, because the mint in those years was a hive of activity, with presses thundering, planchets rattling in bins, dies being prepared and retired, and through all of that mechanical precision there was still room for the unexpected, for a steel planchet left over from 1943 to be fed into a press intended for bronze, for a transition alloy to find its way under the dies, for a single coin to slip past quality control and enter the bloodstream of commerce, perhaps only for a moment before it was plucked out again by some sharp-eyed observer, and from that moment onward its destiny diverged from the millions of ordinary cents that would live hard, short lives in circulation, being dropped, scratched, and worn to anonymity, and instead it would begin its quiet pilgrimage toward the rarefied air of numismatic royalty. And when you imagine that journey, you can almost see the coin being passed from one careful hand to another. Its custodians perhaps unaware of its eventual destiny but sensing that it was special, keeping it separate from the jangling herd of everyday change, and decades later, when knowledge and technology had advanced enough to identify and verify such rarities, it would finally be recognized for what it was, a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, a treasure that had been hiding in plain sight, and that recognition would spark the chain of events leading to its record-breaking sale. And what is most compelling about these stories is that they do not belong solely to the elite collector with deep pockets, because the wheat penny's humble origins mean that the next great discovery could be made by anyone, anywhere, whether in a dusty shoebox of coins forgotten in a basement, in a thrift store jar labeled pennies, 10 cents each, or in the till of a corner store, and that possibility fuels a kind of democratic treasure hunt that keeps the wheat penny alive in public consciousness, its image and legend spreading across YouTube videos, news articles, and social media posts, each retelling reigniting the thrill of the hunt. And while the headline numbers, 7 million, 6 million, 5 million, are almost surreal, what they represent is the extraordinary value we place on rarity and history combined, the way a simple object can become a portal to another time, and in the case of these wheat pennies, to moments when the world was in flux, when every resource was precious. And yet even in the most industrial and standardized processes, the human and mechanical elements left room for miracles, and as long as those miracles exist, the chase will continue. Because somewhere out there, maybe in your own pocket right now, could be the next chapter in this ongoing saga, and that is why the wheat penny will never fade into obscurity, but will remain a shining symbol of hidden potential, of the stories that lie beneath the surface of the ordinary. And if you find that as captivating as I do, then like, subscribe, and keep looking closely at every coin you touch, because history has a way of rewarding those who pay attention. And as the echoes of the astonishing sales of the 1940, 1944, and 1945 wheat pennies still reverberated through the coin collecting world, a new name quietly rose from the shadows of numismatic obscurity to take its place among these million-dollar marvels: the 1946 wheat penny, a coin so outwardly ordinary that it could pass unnoticed in the palm of your hand. Yet behind its humble copper sheen lay a story of rarity and preservation that would ultimately see it command an almost unbelievable $4.5 million at auction. For the year 1946 marked a transitional moment in American history, the Second World War having ended just months earlier, soldiers returning home to rebuild their lives, industries shifting from wartime production to consumer goods, and the U.S. Mint resuming full-scale peacetime coinage after years of adjustments to accommodate the demands of war. And in this atmosphere of change and urgency, millions of Lincoln Wheat Pennies were struck in the traditional bronze composition, yet as in so many chapters of numismatic legend, somewhere in the intricate dance of planchets, dies, presses, and human oversight, an anomaly was born, with theories swirling among experts that a small batch of 1946 wheat pennies may have been struck using leftover planchets of a slightly different alloy from earlier wartime years, or even on transitional blanks that bore subtle differences in weight and composition. And among this tiny handful, one coin emerged that would one day set the collecting world alight, preserved in virtually perfect condition with sharp strikes, brilliant luster, and immaculate surfaces unmarred by the wear and tear that claims nearly every coin of its era. And the path this coin took from the moment of its creation to the fevered bidding of its record-setting sale is a tapestry of quiet custody and improbable survival. For it is said that the coin was pulled from circulation almost immediately by a bank teller in the Midwest, who noticed its unusual coloration and faintly different feel compared to other cents of the time, tucking it away in a small envelope in the back of a desk drawer where it lay undisturbed for decades, surviving moves, changes of ownership, and even the threat of being forgotten entirely, until an inquisitive heir, sorting through the teller's estate, decided to bring the coin to a local coin shop, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to authentication by a top-tier grading service expert, analysis confirming its unique characteristics, and whispers spreading quickly through the inner circles of high-end numismatics that another once-in-a-generation treasure had been found. And when the auction date finally arrived, the anticipation was electric. The coin displayed under lights that revealed every razor-sharp detail of Lincoln's profile and the wheat stalks, its surfaces glowing with the rich reddish-gold hue that only perfectly preserved bronze can carry. And as the auctioneer began the lot, the numbers climbed rapidly, the room alive with murmurs and the subtle tension of serious money moving in real time, until the final gavel strike sealed the price at an astonishing $4.5 million, placing the 1946 wheat penny firmly alongside the titans of its series and ensuring its place in the annals of collectible history. And in the wake of that sale, the legend of the wheat penny only deepened, as this latest chapter once again proved that monumental value can hide in plain sight, that the smallest coin can carry the largest stories, and that the forces of chance, history, and human curiosity will forever combine to produce treasures beyond the reach of ordinary expectation. For the 1946 wheat penny, like its illustrious predecessors, stands as a testament to the unpredictable beauty of minting anomalies, the importance of preservation, and the unquenchable desire to hold a piece of the past in one's hand, a piece that bridges generations and reminds us that the ordinary can, under the right circumstances, become truly extraordinary, and its story fuels the eternal hunt, encouraging collectors at every level to keep their eyes open, their hands steady, and their imaginations alive, because somewhere, perhaps in a dusty jar or an old roll of coins tucked away in a forgotten drawer, the next legend might already be waiting. And as long as coins like the 1946 wheat penny continue to be discovered, bought, and celebrated, the magic of numismatics will never fade, and the promise that history's most valuable treasures can still be hiding in the everyday will inspire generations to come. And for those who have followed this incredible journey from the first spark of the 1940 penny to the glowing moment of the 1946 sale, the message is clear. Keep searching, keep wondering, and never underestimate the power of the smallest things to hold the greatest worth. So like, subscribe, and keep your eyes wide open for the stories that might be resting quietly in the change you hold today. And the saga flowed on, each year in the Wheat Penny series revealing itself not just as a date on a coin but as a chapter in an unfolding epic of chance, history, and fortune. And after the 1946 Wheat Penny's breathtaking $4.5 million sale, collectors and dreamers alike began to look with renewed intensity at the subsequent mintages, scanning through the familiar Lincoln profile and twin wheat stalks for even the slightest anomaly. Because if a coin from a year so common could, by virtue of a hidden difference and immaculate preservation, ascend to the pantheon of million-dollar treasures, then what other secrets might lie concealed within the small round canvases of American coinage? And as stories of these remarkable finds rippled outward through auction houses, coin clubs, online forums, and late-night conversations between veteran numismatists, the wheat penny transformed from a nostalgic relic of pre-1959 America into a symbol of possibility, the proof that history can hide in your pocket, and the narrative threads connecting each of these coins. The 1940s quiet emergence from the Great Depression, the 1944 steel planchet survivor forged in the crucible of war, the 1945's transitional mystery as peace returned, the 1940 SIXS subtle metallurgical whisper from the tail end of the wartime minting era, wove themselves into a tapestry of both national history and personal fortune. And in telling these stories one after another, the rhythm builds like a heartbeat, each sale at millions of dollars quickening the pulse of the collecting world, each discovery renewing the collective belief that somewhere, right now, in a shoebox or a bank bag or a roll purchased for $1 at a yard sale, there may rest the next unassuming cent whose destiny is to astonish, to command the attention of the most seasoned collectors, to cross the block under the glare of auction lights and see its humble face value explode into numbers that stagger the imagination. And as the years pass, and these great rarities trade hands, sometimes quietly in private sales, sometimes with the public drama of a headline-making auction, their legends only grow richer, their stories retold with embellishments and awe until the coins themselves seem almost alive, tiny ambassadors of the eras they were born into, carrying the textures and tensions of their time forward to ours. And the wheat penny, as a series, holds a uniquely American resonance because it spans decades of the 20th century that saw the nation tested, triumphant, and transformed, from the last echoes of the frontier to the age of industry, through depression and war and into the confident stride of the post-war years. And perhaps that is part of why, when one of these pennies rises above the rest, it commands not only a price but a reverence, an almost mythic status among those who understand that the most valuable thing about a coin is not its metal but its meaning. And so the hunt continues, the legends spread, the numbers climb, and in the hearts of those who watch this world with fascination there is always the lingering thought that the next great story could begin with something as small as a glint of copper at the bottom of a drawer. And the wheat penny's enduring magic ensures that people will keep looking, keep hoping, keep turning over coins in their hands as if they were talismans, because maybe, just maybe, one of them will hold the key to a story worth millions. And if the journey so far has taught anything, it is that the boundaries between the ordinary and the extraordinary are thinner than they seem, and history has a way of rewarding the eyes that notice, the minds that wonder, and the hands that hold on. And as the golden glow of the postwar years began to illuminate the United States, a time when prosperity was on the rise, suburbs were spreading, and the hum of optimism filled the air, the wheat penny continued its quiet, unbroken march through American pockets and purses, each coin carrying the steadfast image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the iconic twin wheat stalks on the reverse. A design already more than 4 decades old yet still deeply familiar, and in 1951, in the bustling facilities of the San Francisco Mint, millions of 1-cent pieces were struck, each marked with the small S mint mark just below the date, an unassuming letter that denoted their origin on the West Coast, where the clatter of coin presses echoed through cavernous minting rooms, copper planchets fed into the hungry jaws of the dies, transformed in an instant into currency meant to flow invisibly through the arteries of the nation's economy. Yet among the vast flood of 1951's wheat pennies, a vanishingly small number emerged bearing the traits that would, decades later, set them apart from all others, and at the very pinnacle of these stood one singular specimen whose perfection, rarity, and mysterious provenance would one day propel it to the astonishing price of $3 million, a figure that seemed almost surreal for a coin minted in such abundance. But such is the alchemy of numismatics, where condition, scarcity of grade, and compelling narrative combine to elevate the ordinary into the extraordinary, and the tale of this 1951's cent begins, as so many of these tales do, with the unlikely preservation of a coin that should by all rights have been spent, scratched, dulled, and forgotten, for it is believed that this particular cent was plucked from the production line or the first batch of its mintage, possibly as part of a special presentation set. Its flawless strike and blazing original luster marking it as something exceptional from the very start, and instead of entering the chaotic whirl of circulation, it was placed with care into a protective holder by an unknown hand, shielded from the air, moisture, and handling that would have erased its perfection, and there it remained for decades, passing silently through the possession of a few discerning owners who either knew or suspected that they were safeguarding something extraordinary. Until it finally came to light in the modern era of coin grading, its surfaces examined under the most exacting scrutiny and found to be of such impeccable quality that it achieved the highest grade ever assigned to a 1951's wheat penny, a technical marvel of preservation that in itself would have commanded a high price. But what pushed it into the multi-million-dollar realm was the rarity of such a grade for this date and mint, combined with the surge of collector demand for the absolute finest known examples of every coin in the Lincoln cent series, a demand driven by registry set competitions and the deep-pocketed rivalry of elite numismatists seeking to outdo one another. And so when this coin finally crossed the auction block, the room was electric, the lot description reading like a love letter to perfection, every facet of the coin's surfaces, strike, and color meticulously detailed, its provenance traced, its singular status among its peers emphasized. And as the bidding began, it was immediately clear that this would not be a routine sale, hands shooting up, phone bidders signaling, the numbers leaping higher and higher in rapid succession, the atmosphere charged with that rare blend of tension and awe that surrounds the sale of a true masterpiece, until at last, after a fierce duel between two determined collectors, the hammer came down at $3 million, sealing the fate of the 1951's wheat penny as one of the most valuable small coins in American history. And in the aftermath, the story spread far beyond the coin world, captivating the public with its sheer improbability. For here was a coin that countless people had once carried in their pockets, worth a cent in 1951 and worth enough to buy a mansion in the 21st century, and its existence rekindled the sense of possibility that fuels the treasure-hunting instinct in people from all walks of life, inspiring renewed searches through old collections, rolls of wheat pennies pulled from bank vaults, and boxes of change long forgotten in attics, because if a cent from such a common year could ascend to the ranks of numismatic royalty, then perhaps the next great find could be waiting in anyone's possession. And so the legend of the 1951's wheat penny joined the grand narrative alongside its predecessors, another shining reminder that in the quiet corners of history and the overlooked details of the everyday, there lies the potential for stories worth millions, the kind of stories that endure, inspire, and keep alive the timeless magic of the hunt. And from that record-shattering moment, the ripples of the 1951's wheat penny's $3 million sale moved outward through the collecting world like waves on a still pond suddenly disturbed by a falling star, each concentric circle touching new hearts, new ambitions, new dreams of discovery, and the San Francisco Mint's output of that year, once considered a mere footnote in the Lincoln cent series, suddenly became the subject of intense scrutiny, as dealers, historians, and hobbyists pored over rolls and albums in search of coins that might come close to the perfection and singularity of that fabled example, for the reality of numismatics is that the allure of a great rarity is never confined to the object itself but spreads to everything around it, elevating the year, the mint, and even the design in the collective imagination, and in the case of the wheat penny. The design already held a place of deep nostalgia and respect in the American psyche, a design that had bridged eras from Theodore Roosevelt's bold vision for American coinage to the postwar boom years, with Victor David Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln staring steadily forward as if to remind each passing generation of the enduring ideals the nation was built upon, and the 1951s, though struck in massive numbers, became proof that within abundance there can still be miracles of scarcity. That quality on a microscopic scale can transform copper into gold in the metaphorical sense, and the mystique around this sale was heightened by whispers of the fierce private competition that had driven the final prize skyward, stories of two rival collectors, each intent on building the ultimate Lincoln cent registry set, each unwilling to yield, their determination not merely about ownership but about legacy, prestige, and the satisfaction of knowing that they possessed something no one else on earth could match. And the fascination spread beyond the elite, reaching small-town coin clubs where members passed around magnifying glasses to examine their own 1951 cents with newfound reverence, and reaching schoolchildren who emptied jars of pennies on kitchen tables, hoping against the odds that one of them might just be the key to a fortune, and all the while the coin itself, now safely housed in a secure vault, sat as a silent witness to the frenzy it had caused, its surfaces still gleaming under controlled light. Every line of Lincoln's hair, every vein in the wheat stalks as sharp as the day they were struck more than 70 years ago, and its story became a parable in the coin world about the unpredictable intersection of history, preservation, and human desire, a reminder that while millions of 1951's wheat pennies still exist, only one had traveled this path to glory, and the moment its auctioneer's gavel fell, it ceased to be simply a coin and became an icon, a benchmark by which other Lincoln cents would be measured, and as time passed, its fame did not fade but grew. Retold in articles, YouTube videos, podcasts, and whispered conversations at major coin shows, always sparking the same wide-eyed disbelief from those hearing it for the first time, always reigniting that universal human urge to search for hidden treasures in the most ordinary places. Because the story of the 1951's wheat penny is not just about rarity or wealth but about possibility. About the idea that even in a world where so much seems already discovered, there are still secrets left to be uncovered, and that is the real fuel that keeps collectors hunting, coins turning over in hands, eyes scanning for the subtle glow of perfection that could change everything. Under the bright industrial lights of the Denver Mint in 1952, the rhythmic thunder of presses striking copper planchets into crisp Lincoln wheat cents echoed against the cavernous walls, a mechanical symphony that had been playing for decades, each metallic impression capturing Abraham Lincoln's steadfast profile on the obverse and the paired wheat stalks on the reverse, the D. Mint mark tucked beneath the date signaling the Rocky Mountain origin of this year's production, and yet within that torrent of tens of millions of coins that spilled forth into the channels of everyday commerce, one singular piece would, by an extraordinary chain of preservation, circumstance, and later revelation, ascend to the summit of numismatic reverence, ultimately commanding a staggering $2 million in a headline-making sale that forever altered the way collectors looked at this otherwise unassuming year. For the 1952 wheat penny had never been regarded as rare in the traditional sense. Rolls of them sat for decades in bank vaults and dresser drawers, the kind of coin even casual hobbyists encountered without much thought. But in numismatics, rarity of condition can be more powerful than rarity of mintage, and in this case, the fabled example was not just well preserved, it was the finest ever recorded. A coin so sharply struck and so flawlessly protected from even the faintest contact marks that under magnification it seemed less a piece of circulated currency and more a tiny work of art. Frozen in time, the original mint luster swirling across its fields in bright, undisturbed cartwheels, the devices standing in sculptural relief as if they had been engraved only yesterday. And how this penny managed to survive in such immaculate form is part of the mystique. Perhaps it was plucked directly from the production line by a mint employee who recognized its perfection. Or perhaps it was included in a small presentation set for a dignitary and forgotten for decades in a safe. Or perhaps it simply slipped into the hands of a meticulous early collector who understood the value of untouched beauty and shielded it from the ravages of handling. Whatever the path, when it finally emerged into the light of the modern grading era, it was met with awe, earning the highest grade ever awarded to its issue. A distinction that instantly made it a target for the most competitive collectors in the Lincoln cent arena, those whose registry sets had already achieved near perfection but who still hungered for the elusive, finest known, status that could only be claimed by owning such a piece, and when the coin came to auction, it ignited exactly the kind of bidding war that turns a coin into legend, the catalog description lavishing attention on every nuance of strike and surface, the professional images unable to fully capture the vibrant glow of the copper in hand, and as the auctioneer's chant filled the room, the numbers leapt higher and higher, phone bidders and floor bidders locked in combat, each unwilling to surrender the prize, until at last the hammer fell at an even $2 million, a figure that made headlines far beyond the coin world, captivating the public with the notion that a humble 1-cent piece, minted in the millions during the Eisenhower era, could be worth enough to buy a luxury home or a fleet of cars. And the sale had the predictable effect of setting off a new wave of searches, with collectors combing through stored rolls of 1952 cents, hunting for even the faintest chance of finding another specimen that could rival the champion, though experts reminded them that perfection on this level is a cosmic accident, the result of flawless striking, immediate preservation, and decades of protection, and yet the dream persisted, because the allure of the wheat penny lies not only in its historic design and long run but in its capacity to surprise, to transform the mundane into the miraculous, and the 1952's $2 million story joined the pantheon alongside its celebrated predecessors, each one a different year, a different mint, a different set of circumstances, yet all bound together by the same magical thread, the capacity of a tiny copper disc to capture history, artistry, and human imagination in equal measure, to inspire both seasoned numismatists and casual treasure hunters, and to remind us that value is often hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment, the right eyes, and the right story to reveal itself. And in the months and years following that jaw-dropping $2 million sale of the 1952 wheat penny, the shockwaves continued to reverberate not just through the upper echelons of elite coin collecting but down to the grassroots level where hobbyists and dreamers alike felt that sudden spark of possibility, that intoxicating idea that somewhere in an overlooked roll, a dusty coin jar, or an untouched collection passed down from a relative, there might be a sleeping giant of value just waiting to be recognized, and the Denver Mint's output from that year, once dismissed as utterly routine, was re-examined under magnifying glasses and high-powered lamps in basements, garages, and coin club meeting halls across America, with each glint of copper sending hearts racing in case it might reveal the kind of immaculate strike and pristine surface that had propelled that record-setter into history. Yet the truth, known all too well by seasoned numismatists, was that the path to such perfection was an intersection of chance and circumstance so rare that it bordered on miraculous, for the overwhelming majority of 1952 cents had been immediately funneled into the current of everyday commerce, clinking against nickels and dimes in change drawers, sliding through vending machines, riding in pockets beside keys and lint, enduring decades of circulation that dulled their once vibrant luster and peppered their fields with countless micro-abrasions, so that when one did miraculously escape such a fate and survive in a state approaching technical perfection, it became something far greater than the sum of its parts. It became the embodiment of preservation itself, a copper time capsule of a specific moment in mid-century America, and part of what captivated collectors about the $2 million example was not merely its rarity and grade but the way it seemed to transport you back to 1952. To the bustling production floor of the Denver Mint where newly struck coins tumbled into bins still warm from the presses, the air thick with the scent of metal and machine oil, the workers going about their duties unaware that one of those countless discs would one day be enshrined as a numismatic treasure, and the auction that unveiled it to the world became the stuff of lore, retold at major shows and in hobby publications, the fierce back and forth bidding painted in almost gladiatorial terms. Two titans of the registry set arena locked in psychological combat, each driven by equal parts pride, prestige, and the irresistible lure of owning something unique, and when the hammer fell, not only had a new record been set for a coin of that date and mint, but an entirely new layer of mythology had been woven into the tapestry of the Lincoln Cent series, a series already beloved for its longevity, artistic merit, and connection to the American story, and in the wake of the sale, the numismatic market itself felt the tremor, with high-grade examples of other common-date wheat pennies suddenly commanding stronger prices as collectors speculated on which might be the next to take a meteoric leap, while in living rooms and kitchens across the country, people who had never before thought about coin collecting found themselves tipping out jars of change, inspecting each cent with fresh curiosity, fueled by media headlines that turned the humble penny into a symbol of hidden fortune. And though the seasoned experts were quick to temper expectations, they also knew that this was how the next generation of collectors was born, not from dry lists of mintages and grades, but from the thrill of the hunt, the tantalizing whisper that maybe, just maybe, There was a copper coin in your possession that could change your life, and the story of the 1952 Wheat penny, now immortalized in numismatic history, continued to circulate in conversations, videos, and articles. A testament to the enduring magic that a small, well-preserved coin can wield over the human imagination. The year was 1953, and at the Denver Mint, the familiar and unbroken rhythm of presses striking copper planchets into Lincoln Wheat cents continued with mechanical precision, each coin bearing the dignified profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the iconic wheat ears on the reverse, the small D mint mark just below the date a modest signature of its origin. And in the sheer enormity of that year's mintage, hundreds of millions of coins entering circulation, it would have seemed inconceivable that one solitary example could, decades later, become the subject of fierce bidding wars, whispered legends, and a record-breaking sale of $1.5 million, yet that is exactly what happened when an unassuming 1953 Wheat penny, preserved in a state so pristine it defied logic, emerged from obscurity and captured the collective imagination of the numismatic world. And while most 1953 cents suffered the fate of all circulating currency, enduring the friction of commerce, the scratches and nicks of everyday handling, the slow oxidation that dulled their copper glow, this particular specimen appeared to have been frozen in time from the very moment of its creation, its blazing original luster radiating like the day it rolled off the dies, the strike so razor-sharp that even under high magnification every detail of Lincoln's hair, beard, and coat stood in sculptural relief. Every grain in the wheat stalks crisp enough to cast microscopic shadows, and experts marveled at the coin's flawless surfaces, utterly devoid of the faintest contact mark, the kind of perfection that suggests it had been set aside at the instant of striking, perhaps by a mint worker with a discerning eye or perhaps by sheer coincidence, sealed away in a protective environment for decades before modern grading and authentication techniques could reveal its unmatched quality, and when it finally came to market, encapsulated in the highest grade ever awarded to its issue, it instantly became the focus of intense interest from the uppermost tier of collectors, particularly those locked in the competitive arena of registry sets, where ownership of a finest known coin can elevate an entire collection's prestige, and the auction that unveiled it was an event unto itself, the catalog description reading like a love letter to numismatic perfection. The professional photography capturing its coppery fire yet still failing to replicate the electric effect it produced when viewed in person under a beam of light, and as the bidding opened, it was clear that the room was brimming with tension, seasoned dealers and private collectors alike aware that opportunities like this are generational, the increments climbing with steady inevitability until the contest distilled down to two determined bidders, their paddles rising in quick succession, each unwilling to yield. The auctioneer's rhythmic chant feeding the energy until at last the hammer fell at an astounding $1.50 million, a figure that drew audible gasps from those present and headlines from media outlets far beyond the niche world of coin collecting, and with that moment, the 1953 Wheat penny joined the pantheon of legendary Lincoln cents whose value transcended their humble face value, becoming a symbol of what makes numismatics so compelling, the marriage of history, rarity, artistry, and the thrill of discovery. And in the aftermath, the sale triggered a wave of renewed interest in the early 1950s. Denver issues, collectors re-examining coins long overlooked, checking for extraordinary strikes, untouched surfaces, and the shimmering vibrancy of original mint luster, all while understanding that the odds of finding another equal to the record holder were vanishingly small. For conditioned rarities of this caliber are accidents of both production and preservation, their survival a delicate balance of timing, chance, and human care, yet the legend of the $1.5 million 1953 served a purpose far greater than simply inflating prices. It inspired the hunt, fueled the conversations at coin shows, in online forums, and at local club meetings, and reminded the world that within the most ordinary objects can hide the extraordinary, and that the story of the wheat penny is not just one of copper and mint marks but of human fascination, perseverance, and the endless hope that somewhere out there, perhaps in a dusty box or a forgotten roll, another miracle of preservation is waiting to be found. And so the legend of the 1953 Wheat penny that crossed the auction block for $1.5 million began to take on a life of its own, carried in the murmured retellings of coin dealers behind display cases at bustling conventions, recounted in glowing detail by veteran collectors to wide-eyed newcomers just discovering the magic of numismatics, and echoed in the countless online posts, videos, and articles that sought to capture the improbable journey of a 1-cent coin from an everyday object of commerce to a coveted artifact of monetary history. For the story wasn't merely about numbers and grades but about the way this coin, like the other extraordinary wheat cents before it, transcended its modest origins and became a bridge between eras, a tangible link between the industrial hum of the Denver Mint in the early 1950s and the hushed, high-stakes atmosphere of a 21st-century auction room where fortunes can change hands in seconds. And as more people learned about it, the 1953 DS tale began to intertwine with broader cultural currents, sparking fresh waves of interest in coin collecting at a time when physical currency itself was becoming less common in daily transactions, a reminder that there is still romance in the tangible, still mystery in the objects we can hold, and that even in a digital age, a sliver of copper can command awe and reverence when rarity, condition, and story converge. And in the wake of its sale, submissions to major grading services spiked as hopeful collectors sent in their own 1953 descents along with other dates, chasing the dream that theirs might share that elusive blend of perfect strike, blazing luster, and untouched surfaces. Though the grading rooms yielded only a few near contenders, none matching the singular champion that had stunned the market, and yet the very act of searching kept the legend alive. Each coin examined under a loupe becoming part of the broader narrative of pursuit, and for dealers, the heightened attention to 1953 examples meant that even solid mint state coins began to command premiums, not because they were inherently rare but because the year now carried a story that buyers wanted to participate in, a story they could hold in their hand, point to in an album, and recount to friends and family. And the deeper one looked into the conditions that birthed such a perfect coin, the more one appreciated the sheer improbability of it all, for mass production at the mint was never designed to produce perfection. Dies wore down, planchets bore microscopic imperfections, coins clashed and abraded as they fell into bins and bags. Yet somehow, through a convergence of fresh dies, clean planchets, and perhaps a short striking run before the dies began to soften, one coin emerged that defied the odds, and then by luck or by the foresight of someone who recognized its beauty, it avoided the slow destruction of circulation for decades until the right moment came for it to surface, and when it did, it didn't just reward its finder, it reignited the sense of wonder that drives the hobby itself, proving once again that coin collecting is not solely about the accumulation of metal discs but about the stories they tell and the connections they forge across time. And so the $1.5 million 1953 Wheat penny continues to cast a long shadow in numismatic circles, its copper glow reflected in the eyes of those who still search, still hope, and still believe that the next great discovery may be just a single coin away. The 1954 Wheat penny, struck in the San Francisco Mint during a period when the United States was experiencing a postwar economic boom and the wheat cent design was nearing the end of its production run, would never have seemed destined for greatness to the millions who handled it fresh from the presses, its copper sheen bright and new yet its purpose purely utilitarian, meant to circulate in change drawers, pass from hand to hand at grocery stores, slip into piggy banks and vending machines. Without a second thought, but in the annals of numismatic history, one particular example would rise far above the anonymous tide of its mintage. A single cent that decades later would command an astonishing $1 million at auction and forever cement its place in the pantheon of legendary Lincoln Wheat Pennies. And the path from that bustling 1954 minting floor to the auction block was one paved with improbable preservation, for while the San Francisco Mint had a reputation for producing quality strikes, the sheer volume of coins, the rough handling of bags and bins, and the inevitable march of circulation meant that most 1954 cents suffered contact marks, dulling, and where that stripped away their newborn brilliance. Yet this singular specimen seemed untouched by time, its surfaces flawless under even the harshest magnification, its original mint luster blazing with that distinctive reddish-gold fire that only fresh copper possesses, the strike so precise that Lincoln's hair, the contours of his cheek, the delicate serifs of the lettering, and the fine parallel lines in the wheat stalks appeared as crisp as if engraved yesterday. And it was this miraculous state of preservation, combined with the fact that no other known example approached its technical perfection, that made it the object of fierce desire among top-tier collectors, particularly those competing in registry sets where the title of finest known carries with it both prestige and bragging rights, and the day it came to auction was the culmination of years of quiet whispers in the numismatic community, rumors that such a flawless 1954 existed locked away in a private collection, a coin that could reset the market for the date. And as the catalog was released with high-resolution photographs that seemed almost to vibrate with copper radiance, the excitement built, drawing attention not only from Lincoln cent specialists but from high-end investors and collectors across series. The auction room, thick with anticipation as the lot was opened, the bidding brisk at first, then narrowing to a tense duel between two determined contenders, Each raise a calculated move in a game of strategy and pride, the increments climbing higher than many believed possible until at last the hammer fell at an even $1 million, a round number that carried symbolic weight and would echo in headlines, YouTube videos, podcast discussions, and collector forums for years to come. And in that moment, the 1954 Wheat Penny was transformed from a remarkable coin into a cultural touchstone within the hobby, its sale proof that even in a series as extensively studied and heavily collected as the Lincoln cent, there were still marvels to be discovered, and the ripple effects were immediate, with prices for high-grade mid-1950s San Francisco issues rising as hopefuls scoured their own collections for candidates that might achieve greatness. Submissions to grading services swelling with rolls and singles, long stored away, and at small-town coin club meetings and massive national shows alike, the story of the $1 million penny was told and retold, not simply as a market phenomenon but as a reminder of the magic inherent in coin collecting, the possibility that an unassuming object, struck for the most ordinary of purposes, could through a rare alchemy of production, preservation, and timing become an artifact of immense value and fascination, and as that $1 million 1954 now rests securely in its holder, shielded from the elements, it carries with it not just the copper and craftsmanship of its creation but the weight of all the dreams and hopes it inspires in those who still search change jars, sift through rolls, and examine coins under a loupe, believing that somewhere, perhaps even in their own hands, the next great story waits to be found. The $1 million 1954 Wheat Penny did not fade quietly into the background after its record-setting auction. Instead, it became a constant point of reference in nearly every serious discussion about post-war Lincoln cents, not only because of the staggering price it realized but also because of the deeper implications it had for how collectors perceive mid-century San Francisco issues. For here was a date and landmark combination that most numismatists, even experienced ones, had long relegated to the category of common in all grades. And yet, when preserved at an almost impossible level of perfection, it had commanded a figure previously reserved for storied rarities of earlier eras, and that revelation altered the psychology of the hobby in subtle but significant ways, making even seasoned dealers more hesitant to dismiss modern or mid-modern coins outright. For the example of the 1954 proved beyond doubt that absolute quality could elevate even the most pedestrian date to the realm of legend, and in the months following the sale, there was a palpable uptick in activity at coin shows whenever raw wheat cents were offered, with collectors leaning in closer, scrutinizing the coins under bright lamps and high-power magnifiers, discussing strike characteristics, luster quality, and die states in minute detail, and the San Francisco Mint of the 1950s came under renewed study. Researchers poring over mintage figures, die replacement schedules, and mint employee interviews from archived sources to understand how a coin of such flawless execution could have been produced and survived untouched for decades, and while many theories emerged, some suggesting it may have been pulled directly from the press by a mint worker, others positing it was part of a special presentation set or stored in an original mint bag that was never opened, none could be proven conclusively, adding a layer of mystery that only intensified the allure. And meanwhile, the market impact was unmistakable, with certified high-grade 1954 cents suddenly drawing competitive bidding where once they languished in dealer cases, their population reports now examined with the same intensity as those of far rarer dates, and even coins a full grade or two below the champion began to trade for multiples of their previous values, creating what dealers quietly refer to as the $1 million halo effect. And this ripple spread outward to other wheat penny dates of the early to mid-1950s, as buyers reasoned that if one sleeper could emerge, perhaps others awaited discovery, leading to a surge in submissions of coins from mint sets, original rolls, and long-forgotten accumulations in safety deposit boxes, and grading services, recognizing the surge in interest, began showcasing extraordinary copper coins on their social media channels, further feeding the excitement. While in the educational corners of the hobby, lecturers at major conventions began incorporating the 1954 sale into talks about condition rarity, illustrating how mintage numbers alone tell only part of a coin story, and for younger collectors, the $1 million penny became an aspirational touchstone, proof that even a coin they might realistically encounter could be a treasure if found in the right state of preservation, and so the legend continued to grow. Passed along not just as a tale of market triumph, but as a reminder of why people collect in the first place, the thrill of the hunt, the satisfaction of discovery, and the enduring romance of holding history in one's hand, knowing that sometimes, against all odds, the smallest things can carry the greatest value.